How does Thomas Pynchon feel about the modern American male? Because we see men all the time on TikTok or YouTube tell us that the modern American man is a soy boy, a beta, and all these other things. But then when you start to look at the men who are saying this, you're like, wait, these are just hollow shells of repression who are putting out their non-intellectual projections out to an illogical mass of individuals who are elevating them in the algorithms. And so when a man, an intellectual, a genius, a Luddite like Thomas Pynchon throws his opinion in a rare nonfiction statement about modern culture into this kind of saturated philosophical space about what men should be in the 21st century, we should listen. And if you guys don't already know, my name is Ian, and here on Right Conscious, we cover everything related to Thomas Pynchon. If you check out the playlist down below, there is an ever-growing library of videos on Pynchon, and I one day hope to have hundreds, if not thousands, of videos on him. And so, enough from me. Let us now hear from Pynchon. It's no secret nowadays, particularly to women, that many American males, even those of middle-aged appearance, wearing suits and holding down jobs, are in fact, incredible as it sounds, still small boys inside. Flange is this type of a character, although when I wrote this story, I thought he was pretty cool. He wants children. Why isn't made clear, but not at the price of developing any real life shared with an adult woman. His solution to this is Nerissa, a woman with the size and demeanor of a child. I can't remember for sure, but it looks like I wanted some ambiguity here about whether or not she was only a creature of his fantasies. It would be easy to say that Dennis's problem was my problem, and that I was putting it off on him. Whatever's fair, but the problem could have been more general. At the time, I had no direct experience with either marriage or parenting, and maybe I was picking up on male attitudes that were then in the air, more documentably inside the pages of men's magazines, Playboy in particular. I don't think this magazine was the projection exclusively of its publisher's private values. If American men had not widely shared such values, Playboy would have quickly failed and faded from the scene. And so let's take this point by point. Pynchon is 100% correct that we are living in a sibling society, a society of adolescent men and women who are fronting as adults, who have money, who have the toys in the garage, but are really small children. And when we look at the masculine men, at the men like Andrew Tate or whoever the hell is trying to red pill us, they are incomplete men, because to become a man or a woman, you need to do a couple things. First of all, as a human, you need to have a baseline of intellectual, spiritual, emotional, and physical education and integration. And so you don't fall prey to certain weaknesses in situations where you maybe can act in an immoral, unjustifiable, or kind of reactionary way. But then on top of that, there is this kind of ever-present, lifelong journey of integrating a lot of the more feminine or heart-based aspects of the soul that don't come as naturally to men. But we are forever interlopers in this odd reality because we were never given an opportunity to find a community and vision for ourselves in our childhood and early adolescence. And thus, we are stuck there forever. When you look at the initiation rites of most Christian religions, they are very weak. If any of you guys have ever been baptized or participated in an adolescent ritual in Christianity, it's basically nothing. You maybe gain some more power, gain some more authority, but it doesn't feel like anything. But when you go back to pagan societies and you look at their initiation rites, they are super hardcore. My sister, who is super into spirituality, recently completed a vision quest where she didn't eat or drink any water and sat out in the woods without any technology for 5 days straight. And she was monitored. And before this whole journey started, she did a sweat lodge ceremony and then did one at the end before she could eat any drink any water or eat any food. And from what I heard from her, that was not an easy experience. And it was revolutionary in terms of how she viewed her life and what really matters. And our kind of pseudo-adolescent rituals that are supposed to turn, boys into men that we've kind of configured into our odd society are psychedelic drugs. But just look at the history. Think of, maybe some of you guys have taken psychedelics and gone deeper into your own life and made progress. But when you look at the other 99% of people who've taken psychedelics, it's done nothing for them. A lot of people take them and they say, "Oh my God, that was a bad trip. That was crazy, bro." And they're one and doneers. And even worse, there's a whole class of people who take psychedelics recreationally and become more hyper impressionable and thus just become more of what they are and more of what society and the counterculture or whatever wants them to be. And that is not a free thinking, integrated individual that is actually an adult. And so the whole 1960s, 1970s experiment with psychedelics that was once again revived in the mid to late 2010s because of Joe Rogan and the legalization of marijuana all across the country, it has failed because at the core, it's missing the aspect of community. Because if we go back to these adolescent boys and girls, they were, first of all, living in a harsh society where knowing your purpose, knowing who you are is important. People float around and live in their parents' basements and do nothing for decades of their life. And there is no real incentive to get to know who you are because it isn't a life or death scenario. But when we look at like suicide rates and like mental health stuff, it actually is a life or death scenario. But think of the classic pagan culture. You go through these initiations, most of the time involving extreme pain or extreme hardship. And other times, doing symbolic rituals that all reinforce a certain image. A lot of pagan societies have a name, like, your name is White Wolf or whatever. And that's the energy, that's the kind of destiny that you have seen in yourself and others have seen in you, and that you're going to carry throughout your life. And that may seem silly and limiting, and it kind of is. But to become a man, to become a woman, you have to become a person with a purpose. Your purpose can't just to be a middle-aged man wearing a suit, going home, saying hi to the kids a little bit, then watching football, looking at your phone, and basically ignoring everything. I mean, it's so sad, you guys. I'm not here to act elitist or act like I'm better than anybody else. But the only difference between me, and I know a lot of you guys are the same in relation to your friends group, is that we do daily disciplines, daily things to help us kind of work toward that purpose or work toward becoming a better human being, work toward becoming a man. And we're so far behind because we don't really get going until age 18. I've been a high school English teacher for 6 or 7 years now, and most of my male students are basically inept. They may have a certain aspect or one thing in their life that they are good at. They're the guys who are tough and they do sports, or who are super into fixing cars or into nerdy stuff. But there's no emphasis on them becoming integrated, action-oriented human beings who can make a change in the world. And a lot of them, and they're not too far away from childhood, but a lot of them love their Hot Wheels, love football and sports, love these things that little boys still love. But what's crazier is what happens when that never ends. I still know adult men who are into Hot Wheels, who are into building model ships and these things. And that's not bad at its core. That's a behavior, that's an action, that's an interest. But when you look at them and they're an unindividuated man or woman, and this is what you see a lot with like beauty and like that type of stuff, like women who carry that on, it's a very malignant aspect. If you don't graduate from that in terms of your soul, then all you are is just a little boy. And it's crazy that we have little boys making big decisions out in the world, little boys who own guns, who are reactionaries, little boys who control our politics, little boys who basically comprise the illogical masses of the internet, on Reddit, on YouTube, of every comment section, and who elevate God knows who and can be manipulated by any political party or any person because they've never really found out who they really are. And Pynchon, kind of moving past that, I can go into initiatory rites and that stuff all day. Like, I love that stuff. And I would love to see you guys in my Thomas Pynchon course and my Thomas Pynchon book club. This week, we are about to start Gravity's Rainbow. And my job is to help you finish the book and understand the book. Every single week, we are going to have a book club call. And I also will be posting a corresponding course that will be breaking down what the hell is happening in the book, because sometimes it's not so clear. But if it's years in the future, I'm going to record and post all the book club calls for you to watch, and also have a weekly discussion post where you can ask questions about the group. I also host daily office hours where you can talk to me about anything, but specifically if you have any questions related to Pynchon or Gravity's Rainbow, I would be more than happy to answer them. But I'm crazy, you guys. One hard book is not enough. We are reading 11 difficult books at once. We are reading in the Right Conscious Book Club right now, Infinite Jest, IQ 84, William T. Vollmann, 3 Cormac McCarthy books, Moby Dick, and many other novels. Because my goal is to create a literary renaissance, and we can't do that with 1 book a month. And so if you join the Substack, and the link to that is in the description below if you scroll down, you also get access to my Cormac McCarthy course, my David Foster Wallace course, our writing group, my writing, and a lot more that I am currently building. And so if you have any questions, shoot me an email, and I would love to see you guys over there. But Pynchon says that this man wants children, but not at the price of developing any life shared with an adult woman. And most married men, most men, their number one struggle in life is actually connecting with women. The number one complaint of women, and it just goes on and on, is that these men have no idea how to talk about their feelings. They are basically just a bunch of emotional idiots. And you have no idea what they're thinking or feeling, and they hold all this stuff in and they repress it. And that is a part of being a man, like sitting and putting your head down and getting shit done. Like no matter what's going on, no matter if your wife is mad and your kids are being crazy and everything is, gone chaotic, you got to sit down and, continue forward and like hold an emotionless experience. But that doesn't need to be the main frame for your entire life. Procreation, just procreating, doing the Andrew Tate, the polygamist, the polyamorous, which is in and of itself isn't a problem if there is actual emotional connection. But most men now kind of envision women as just a hole for them to orgasm into, even if it's their wife. And I'm not here, like we need to become feminists or do anything like that. But it's 2024, and most of my friends have a garage full of secrets being held from their wife. They have no real conversations, no real confrontations with their spouse. And basically their life is to just get money, find a woman who is a child, as Pynchon says, and to be able to just override them and do whatever they want with them. And this is for all type of men. And this one could be said for certain women too. I know women who just run over their men, pussy whip them or whatever. And this kind of dominatrix, domineering mindset is the core fantasy of a little boy. Because think back to your life, I'm here at my parents' house right now, visiting, and, they have all my old toys, and I was looking at them the other day, and, I have a pirate ship, and I wanted to be a pirate, and I wanted to do these things, and I wanted power. I had these fantasies of what I could do and these grand conquests that I could go on in my mind. And, still today I have those, slight thoughts. Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to be the greatest booktuber in the world. But, I usually let those thoughts settle and don't fantasize on them every single day and like make them my reality. But as a little boy, that's what you do. You want to be the greatest football player. You want to make it to the NFL, and that's great. But what if that never ends? And the ultimate fantasy as a young child is to have total control over something, to have no obligation, to have something with zero consequences. And this problem isn't getting solved, and because this is something I've heard of, 2 instances I heard from women recently. And so these 2 women are, I would say, as left-wing as you can get. And their boyfriends are also Democrats, so-called feminists. So we're not dealing with, redneck Billy with the mullet, and Jeannie, who was raised religious and, was seen, told just to be a vessel and obedient to her man. We're dealing with progressive young people. And these 2 stories, which correspond to a lot of other people in my life and historical things I've read and even in books, told me, or really told my wife, I should say. I'm getting all this secondhand. I'm not talking to 23-year-old radical socialists very often in my own personal time. These women had experienced breakups, and the core reason they got out of the relationship was because they would be living with their boyfriend or whoever, and they would come home, say, "What's up? Hey, what's up?" Start getting baked, watching some podcasts, watching something, and then just expect sex out of them, and then just have sex with them, even if they were unwilling. And when it talked to them, when it connect with them, when it helped them orgasm, wouldn't do anything. Just view them as a vessel. And this is most men I know. Too, most men in reality, like the majority of men, only care about their own orgasm and have no heart or no feeling about making their woman, who can have multiple orgasms and go much crazier and experience, totality. They don't care about that. And that's something we thought that we were going to develop. Look at this world. Look at all this information. We're like, wow. But technology, digital technology, the separation out of community, us being isolated, has actually made stuff like that more prevalent. Because we are scared of actually developing a real connection. Because if you do that, you're going to have to confront For instance, with the woman, something that you can't understand, how long does an orgasm last for a man? Not that long. How long can orgasms, and if they just keep going, last for a woman? A really long time. And if you look at like scientific studies about how strong, in comparison they are, it's not even comparable. But to do that means that you have to have all the strings attached. And so the prototypical male that's really a little boy, this is their game plan. They love bomb. They get into these relationships and they love bomb. They act like they're woke or they're integrated or they're wherever. They can love and they talk about their feelings. They cry about how their mom abused them and how daddy was an alcoholic. And then suddenly when it comes time to actually creating the real connection, once they can get over that first phase, suddenly they're detached. Suddenly they're unsure. Suddenly they're feeling a little bit wishy-washy about the scenario and want to start rambling on. And it creates all types of confusion and problems. I have so many friends who are like this. And at some level, I was once like that and did that to hadn't when I was lost and hadn't individuated yet. Shout out to all the women I've manipulated and screwed over back in my earlier life. Anyway, in pagan and Christian culture, obviously women were treated like shit. They weren't seen much more as, a vessel or whatever. But with this opportunity, with this chance, with, all this new information and us being able to access our emotions and speak at a different level and have access to art that can show us how to do that, we dropped the ball. And going back to my earlier idea, I think it's because of a lack of community. Because I'm the only one telling my friends who are like super close-minded and weird, like, hey, you need to actually try to connect with your wife. Do you think the reason why she yells at you and won't do things that you want, or like you have all these problems, is because you guys just like don't actually connect? It's great. I mean, it's crazy. And these guys act like I'm speaking some fucking foreign language. Like this is like some like, oh my God. And they're like, I can't do that. Like, that's weird. Like I had my friend the other day, he was like, that's weird. Like, why would I do that? But that guy plays 6 hours of video games a day, has tablet kids, threw all of his kids on SSRIs or ADHD medication and called it good. And Pynchon really hits home with this idea. And this has only gotten worse when he says that I don't think Playboy is the projection of the publisher's private values. I don't think that the success of Playboy and the magazine is just Hugh Hefner, like just putting it out there. Because we live in a capitalistic society, supply and demand. As Pynchon says, Playboy would have quickly failed and faded from the scene if American men did not share such values. And most of the men watching this right now are pornography addicts, straight up. And if you're not that, you're probably addicted to orgasms. We have not transcended out of Playboy, out. And I hate to say it, the objectification of women, but that's level 1. That's level 0. Like masturbating to a screen to a fake chick who is a simulacra of a recording of a fake scene, who is maybe being trafficked or like having problems. Like that's a joke. But we've built this behemoth of a society without connection, without love, without intimacy. And that's so stressful that we need that. That's why so many people are also marijuana addicts. And I view nothing morally wrong with smoking marijuana or watching pornography. I'm not a Christian. That's not what this is about. But we were sold a lie that these things were going to liberate us. But 99% of people I know who smoke marijuana are not using it in a way to expand their consciousness and make their life better. They're using it as a way to kill stress and hide, confronting trauma because of decisions that they've made in their actual life. The stress that you have in your life is almost entirely your fault. Like maybe you got screwed over as a kid or something, but today you were the one choosing to have the mortgage, to do these things, to work the job. Like it's all self-imposed. And we were sold a lie that, OnlyFans and liberating women with amateur pornography was going to be good for them. But now most men just view women as a whole because they've been trained in that manner since they were 6 years old and exposed to pornography. And sex and drugs actually come together very beautifully because when you go back and look at the hippie movement and actually research it, one of the saddest aspects of it was, other than it was a CIA-controlled operation, was all the young women that were manipulated. And this still happens today at a lot of levels. But so if you go to San Francisco, for instance, in 1968, 1969, everyone's wearing tie-dye. Everyone's got flowers in their hair. There's this, kind of nationwide thought revolution going on. And people, random chick in Nebraska who doesn't like her dad hears about it. And she says, you know what? I'm going to fucking get out of here. I'm going to hitchhike or take a bus. I'm going to go to California. And she's there and it's fun and she's smoking weed and everyone's open-minded and there's good music. And she meets a man who's got the tie-dye on, who's open-minded. And just like those guys we talked about earlier, at the start, maybe love bomb, but deep down, there's some crazy motherfuckers. And that's what happened in the 1960s. So many women were abused, killed, raped, got STDs, were thrown into cults because they got drawn in because of this outward appearance of these liberated men who were smoking marijuana and, were engaging in free sex and orgies. And what's funny about the ping-ponging of all that is that up in Ukiah, California, where Jim Jones had moved from Indiana with his crew, they weren't overly successful. They had a little congregation and were doing their things, but at that time, Jim actually hadn't gone off the deep end yet, like completely. He was still morally somewhat sound and hadn't started sleeping with everyone and taking all the drugs. But suddenly they got this this massive recruiting effort started to happen because all these people from San Francisco were washed out of the hippie movement. They were like, dude, this sucks. Like being on heroin and getting STDs and being manipulated and abused by these men. I'm done with this, but I don't want to go back to my dad in Nebraska, or maybe I can't. And so what they reverted to was Christianity, to supreme order, to giving everything up, which kind of aligned with their hippie values, and going up to Ukiah to Jim Jones' compound and just living a pretty chill, drug-free, and regimented life with the religion they grew up with. And obviously, look how that ended up. And there was actually a fundamentalist and revivalist surge in the 1970s after the hippie movement. Like, all these movements all coincide with each other. But we're being sold the same lie right now, that if you get stoned and you listen to How the West Was Won by Led Zeppelin, or your favorite music, and you hear it and you feel deeply, you watch your favorite movie while stoned, and like you do everything while stoned, and you're feeling like, oh my God, I'm feeling, but you're not connecting. You're not learning. You're not integrating. You're not hearing the silence, which, real writing, real art that connects at least with nature is almost done always while sober. Not just sober in terms of drugs, but in a sattvic, in a very middle path state of mind. And, funny enough, most of my friends who are addicted to masturbating and porn are also daily marijuana users. It all connects. It's all limiting our ability to connect with each other. And, in small doses or whatever doses, if used correctly, not the biggest deal. But the way we're using it, the way that we've been trained, the way we've been stressed out has made men really hollow shells of what they could be. And that's why we elevate the Andrew Tates and all these people, because we don't even know what is this real male. I don't even know if anyone knows anymore, because you need to create these leaders, to create these like powerful figures in a movement. You need this wide starting population. Not everybody is going to be like the person who's going to be like kind of the hero or the icon. And so they're going to need initiation rites. They're going to not have to be addicted to pornography and these things early in life. They're probably not going to be religious, because that just stunts and shames you in so many different ways. Then they're probably they're going to have to be homeschooled, most likely from a middle-class family. How many people are like that in the world? How many people are going through that? Like, what's our data set? And it's not looking very big. And then with those people, do rise to power, then how's the rest of the population? Are they going to view them as the one? And the answer is no. So we actually don't know who was out there, who to model ourselves after. If you were that person, would you want to get on TikTok or YouTube and try to win everyone over soul by soul as they are just breaking you down with their own trauma? We've basically not created a system that doesn't incentivize the actual men, the actual leaders, the actual people that we need to look up to exist, or at least be in front of us. And the destruction of the community and us isolating ourselves in suburbia and on our phones has contributed to that. So this is why men are still small boys inside. And I would like to thank Thomas Pynchon for giving me the information, the kind of skeleton to kind of launch off into, because he never would in nonfiction. He just is such a recluse. And thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for supporting. I would love to see you over in the Gravity's Rainbow Book Club and course, or just down in the comment section below. And I will see you guys in the next video.